hitting it, and it wasn't going to good.
Like, what's
Just
happening?
Jackie, you just had to be.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to get this up. Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Good.
Good.
To see you.
Likewise, as always.
Are you there? Oh, gosh, somebody drew a map.
For you.
Thank you. Oh, you're going still? I need to go.
Oh, gosh, I have to go. Yeah. I've been drinking all. I have to, like, gallons.
How you doing, man? Sorry.
It's a safety hazard.
I know. Almost tripped over it.
Just grab that, bring it right down. That way they can hear you. You're going to direct it towards you. It's got some good flexibility.
How is it that I keep losing pens? Yeah.
Do you not have a pen pocket in your bag? Oh, no, it's that. Mine looks like that, too. Is it, mine's, it's, what is that? It's quinoa? Mine has that.
Yeah, it's quinoa.
Quinoa. It's just a weird color.
That's good.
What's the color? I was thrown off. Mine looks totally different. Mine,
Like
thrown
quinoa.
off.
I was... Yes. I have one and it doesn't work. So. Why don't you toss those, just in case? The backup to the backup.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's Jamaica's national bird. When we were there was a little nest, a little egg in it. It was high up in a tree. I almost broke my neck.
Looks like felting.
It was so beautiful.
Tonight, is it my turn to respond?
Yes, it is. I meant to ask you that. Yeah.
I watched the last one, it was really something.
Who wants to do the? You're going to do that too? Good. Great. Thank you. I think because everybody likes the way you do it.
It's working.
I think just drains battery.
So I just didn't want to take you by surprise. Thank you.
I see the number dropping. If I just like.
Oh, okay, that's right.
No, it's not.
And then when we do the certificates, I'd like everybody to stand out. You and I there, if you give. She did, that's why. Yeah, I'll give her this. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Sometimes we have to figure it out beforehand, and then it gets really confusing.
Right.
I think we're all seated. I'd like to call this City Council regular meeting to order, July 15th, Monday. Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear higher power, we admire the work of your hands and the power expressed in your world. We accept the tasks before us, and we are mindful of your wisdom. Please grant us the time to enjoy our work and guide us in this time together. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Member Sierra?
Present.
Member Barentine?
Present.
Member Cuesta?
Present.
Member Martinez?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Present.
Member Wink?
Present.
Mayor Olson?
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve 5A, the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of July 1st, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of July 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
A second.
All right. Any corrections, concerns? Seeing Member Martinez?
Thank you, Mayor. I was not in attendance at that meeting, so I would prefer to abstain from voting on this.
All right. Okay, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes and 1 abstention, the 1 abstention being Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. And then could I have a motion to approve 5B, the minutes of the special City Council meeting of July 3rd, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting on July 3rd, 2019.
And could I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any Member Martinez again?
I was also not in attendance at this meeting, so I would like to abstain from this one as well.
Thank you. Member Wink?
I will also abstain, given my absence from this meeting.
Thank you. Did you push it again? No. All right, good. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes and
Member Wink.
Oh, Wink, yeah.
I beg your pardon.
Always. 5 ayes and 2 abstentions. The 2 abstentions are Councilmember Martinez and Councilmember
I
Wink.
actually didn't press it.
I think she did, but it was after the fact, so it needed
So it
to
didn't
just
show
be
up on
acknowledged by the city clerk that we had 2 abstentions, Member Wink and Member Martinez. The rest voting yes. Thank you. 5B passes. Agenda item 6 is recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for a scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting. Through the city clerk's office. Only those who meet the deadline can speak in this section. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council, and there's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Written materials for the presentation to council may be submitted to the city clerk as a speaker approaches the podium. A USB port is available for public presentations. So those who signed up tonight, the first one up is Mr. Brad Nixon. He's the chair of Alliance for Commerce in Englewood, and he's going to address council about the findings from their recent business focus group interactions and invite council to participate in the August 7th walking tour in Englewood's industrial area.
Wow,
Thank you.
that's a lot. I hope I can get it covered.
Thank you. You state your name and whether you live in the city or not.
My name is Brad Nixon. I'm the chair for the Alliance for Commerce in Englewood. I am a resident of Centennial, actually. I just wanted to come to you all and give you just a brief update on some of the work that we've been doing in the Alliance for Commerce in Englewood. We took it upon ourselves to actually send out about 70 different postcards to businesses, new businesses primarily within the Englewood area, to meet with them and invite them to come to one of our regular scheduled monthly meetings and to get an opportunity to connect with them, to understand what their was on their mind, what was in their hearts, to really get a sense of how the whole process of coming to Englewood and starting a business or continuing a business, how that whole thing works with individuals who took time to be with us. There was about 8 different businesses over the course of about 3 months that we did this. Where we had a dialogue, various discussion points. We as a group came up with a list of questions that we generally ask businesses when we either go out to meet with them or they come in to meet with us, just to understand a little bit more about their business, as well as how the city is doing relative to their business and what they're trying to do. Really, our one and only goal, aside from getting to know them, was how can we assist them in being better at helping to make their business thrive within Englewood. And we got some great feedback, lots of feedback actually. I won't take you through all of it. We'd be happy as a group to come and sit with you and have more discussions with you about the content that we came up with. I think each and every member had a little bit different take on the information, but genuinely I think it kind of distills down to a few points. The first one that I'll tell you about is there was a little bit of, let me back up. Let me first of all say these comments may come off as a little bit critical, and I don't believe that any one of the businesses who came and talked about it meant them to be critical. We asked the questions, so they gave us the feedback in an honest and sincere fashion. So when you hear these things, keep that in mind, that they were prompted, and they were trying to help us be better and do better at the things that we want to attract business into the city. So first of all, the process by which businesses come to permits and licenses, I think, was a little bit of a struggle for people to know who to talk to, the process oftentimes. And there were a couple instances where I felt like that maybe they didn't get consistent advice or consistent direction from departments that were within the city. There was a second item on here was that they didn't feel adequately recognized by the city as a new business within the city. Their first notice was a tax payment notice, so versus some other type of communication that we might have with them. There's also a sense that maybe that the business community in general is a little fragmented, and I think that has to do with geography that we cover as far as where the major retail centers are and some other types of business that they have. One of the things I will tell you is that they all said that the city was full of potential and that there was a lot of excitement about what they saw within the city. I can kind of boil down my comments into communicate. I think that we all need to do a better job of communicating with one another, and I think that the business community probably would appreciate that and find great value in that. Just a few recommendations that we do have. I would say that there would be a greater emphasis on communication tools that reinforce and augment city processes and procedures that are already in place. And what I mean by that is I believe that there's already some checklists and some flow charts that exist. Maybe do a better job of surfacing those or promoting those as ways for the business community to interact with the city. To create a more comprehensive view of maybe what businesses can expect from the city of Englewood. And I would suggest also to do this in concert with the Englewood Chamber of Commerce. I think there's a lot of common purpose between the two, and collectively try to answer the question of what does the business need versus what do we need from the business. Let's see, I kind of alluded to this. Let's consider sending them a welcome letter as welcome to Englewood. I think that's an easy gesture. I think it's underrated these days. Certainly a handwritten note are underrated these days, and I think most businesses would appreciate that type of acknowledgement. Put a face in the name with key people.
Unfortunately, your time is up.
Okay,
Can you
well,
finish
that
in
was
a couple
it.
seconds?
That was it. And you'll have an accompanying letter that will come back to you later this week.
We have a couple questions from council. Member Barentine is first, if you don't mind.
Hi, thank you very much for coming and doing this work.
You bet.
I agree with you. I think too many of our new businesses, the first contact that they have is a tax notice, some of them before they've even opened their doors. So who would be writing these? Are you trying to have the ACE committee be part of this, or is that something you want to partner with the chamber, or would you want staff or council to do so? I mean, how would you organize to do these welcome letters or cards?
Well, I will tell you that ACE already does send thank yous out to longstanding businesses who've been within the city of Englewood for, I think we cut it off at 25 years and up. So we very consistently send a thank you for your business that you have.
Who provides you with that information?
I'm sorry, what?
How do you get that longevity?
We get it from MuniRevs, so
Okay.
it's information that's already available
Thank you.
and out there.
Member Martinez has a question.
Thank you for coming. I was feverishly writing all your recommendations down, but I don't think my hand was as fast as you were. Would you be able to email us your recommendations as well? Awesome.
Right. Thank you. I have a question. I signed a letter that is supposed to be sent and I think mayors in the past, did that not come through ACE? Maybe it was.
It may be part of our packet that we have, so we have an Alliance for Commerce in Englewood packet. It's kind of an introduction to the city for businesses. We use those when we go out and we speak with people or somebody comes in.
Okay, but not necessarily a letter that goes out every time there's a new person, or a new
Correct.
business.
It could be used for that same
Okay,
purpose.
that's great. Thank you for that info. Appreciate it. Next up is Mr. Jerry Walker, an Englewood resident, here to speak to council.
Jerry Walker, 4180 South Pearl Street, Englewood, Colorado. This time last year, to go back in a little bit of history, we're approaching the one-year anniversary of the death of one of our citizens. And when that happened last year, there were a number of people who got pretty riled up about the fact that this wasn't the first time that this happened and that nothing had been done about it. And things got a little heated, and someone sent a letter to the chief of police and to the mayor about, I think, blowing up the building or something like that. And the mayor and Mr. Keck had a conversation, and she had demanded that the metal detector be used. Now, tonight, every person in this room has walked through that metal detector. Wait, maybe not everyone. I believe there's one person in the room who hasn't walked through the metal detector in the 24 city council meetings since it was starting to be used. That would be you, Madam Mayor. You always come through the back door, but you want us all to go through the metal detector. So we're just going to start calling you the backdoor mayor. Yeah, I think it's pretty funny when you tell people what they have to do and when you figure you don't have to do it either. Second thing is that you're doing your minutes, approval of your minutes, completely wrong. I never knew that until our last Code Enforcement Advisory Committee when our recording secretary told me that not only were we doing it wrong in the committee, but that the city council was also doing it wrong. So you might want to check with Mrs. Willis, and she can instruct you on how to do it properly. She did it with us with several interruptions of the committee meeting. So, and I think that she's going to give us another hiatus for July, the way things look right now. So, and I kind of like that. I like being off for a month. It's really nice. And the last thing I have is that I am not homeless, haven't been for a long time, don't plan on being. When I show up early for a meeting here on the second floor, there was a time when we could sit on a bench, not on the stairs, not on the floor, but on a bench. Well, the homeless have deprived us of that. Well, actually, the homeless haven't. The city has. Whoever's decided to take any benches that we might want to sit on up here on the second floor where we're waiting. And I understand you're trying to punish us along with the homeless. So that's about all I got for you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing no questions for you. Next up is Mr. Mathew Schultz, an Englewood resident, here to address council.
Hello, my name's Mathew Schultz. I live at 4650 South Bannock Street. I'm here tonight to discuss the stormwater feasibility study that Calibre presented to City Council, and staff had recommendations in the June 10th and July 8th study sessions. I first spoke to council almost a year ago about the flooding situation, as my home was one of the homes that was impacted. And I can say that a year later, we all probably thought we would be further along in repairs and having normalcy back in our lives, but we're not. And so I wanted to come up tonight and speak about some of the recommendations that you all asked for and just give my point of view on those. So over the last year, I've heard comments from City Council saying that this was a top priority, and I took all of you at your word. Everyone said, you know, that infrastructure is a top priority. I left watching the last meeting feeling a little disheartened, to be honest. I know that the S1 and S2 pipes are critical, but my home is obviously impacted by the S3 pipe. The original recommendation from staff and Calibre was that that would be an easy pipe to fix first. There's CDOT issues and other issues that impact how quickly we can do S1 and S2. And S3 is easier because there are less logistical things to consider, and it also feeds directly into Greenbelt, which is already existing flood proofing. I hope that the council isn't suffering recency bias. I know that the sinkhole happens every year in Englewood, and unfortunately it happened a week ago, right before you all were prompted to make a critical decision about which pipe should be fixed. I would urge you all to remember that a year ago someone lost their life at the S3 pipe. Yes, the sinkhole, we've had people in the past be in harm's way with that as well too. But the fact of the matter is that where I live, it's very stressful. At the flood that caused this, at the storm event that caused the sinkhole this time, I was at work and my video doorbell went off, and I looked at it and I couldn't see who was on there. I rushed home. I can share the video with all of you, but you can see all the water flowing through my neighborhood on the video doorbell. The person that was on the video doorbell was a neighbor's son running door to door, frantically ringing everyone's doorbells, saying, "It's happening again, it's happening again." Another neighbor, 2 doors up, she neurotically checks weather apps. All of our lives have become checking weather apps. Even today I was in a meeting. A lot of my day job is interviewing people, and so I go into a room for an hour and interview people. As I went into a room today, the clouds were gathering and it looked pretty bleak, and all I could think about during that session was, I hope it's not happening again today. I think that I would encourage you all, since you have the authority to go out and get bonding and raise fees, to look at not just S1 and S2, but S1, S2, and S3, and consider the order that you do those in. I am not minimizing S1 and S2. It all needs to be done. The fact of the matter is the city was never built for any flood event, any storm event of any substantial amount. And so this is work that's long overdue. The city has said in many meetings that we just discovered this is a problem. Some people say we've known about this since 1998. There was a flood event on the S3 pipe in the 1970s. There was a study done at that time where the findings were very similar. We keep doing study after study, and in the 70s and last year, there were people that actually died on the S3 pipe. And so I think, you know, there is a lot of passion. The previous speaker said that residents are at our wits' end and tensions are running high, but there is honestly an amount of PTSD that all of our neighbors have, and some of us come up here and speak every week and are angrier, and some of us don't show up because we don't feel like we're getting anywhere. I would just encourage you to consider looking at S3 pipe. If you have a choice between 10-year and 25-year pipe, please go with the 25-year pipe. Part of what's causing the sinkhole is it's shaped like a U. Sediment drops down into the bottom, and water keeps going from the 10-year pipe through the 25-year pipe into the next 10-year pipe. If we're gonna fix the problem, we need to do it in a comprehensive manner. And then the other thing that's alarming is the pipe that caused the sinkhole, they said it has 50% sediment in it. So whatever changes we make, I'd encourage us to maintain those pipes. It doesn't matter if we put 10, 25, 100-year pipe in the ground. If we're not maintaining them and letting them accrue 50% debris so that they're ineffective, this would be a complete waste of our time. And thanks for your time.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, but thank you very much for coming. Next is Ms. Vicki Hoffmann here also to address council.
Vicki Hoffmann, 4630 South Bannock. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about my honest to God disgust about what happened at the last study session last Monday. People do not need to be treated that way. I don't feel that city employees should go unheard. I don't feel like, for the most part, that some people that come up here are even heard. People are sit on their computers and look down, and I don't think that that is what people need. The fire marshal came to you and was blatantly honest how she felt, and you did nothing other than manipulate what was going on behind the back of the scenes. We're at a year anniversary right now. Hopefully you've gotten this chart. This shows, per Eric Keck, the approximate rainfall last year was 2 inches. Clearly shows that that was a one-year flood, not 100, not 500. I would like to know where the 60 years worth of funds for the infrastructure has gone. 60 years of funds. We haven't been replacing, we haven't been maintaining, we've been barely repairing. Where is the money? There should be no reason to have a bond when you have collected 60 years worth of fees. People are really upset in our area. We still haven't been heard from. There's still been no discussion with flood people. I've had some really good discussions with my neighbors. They have some great ideas. But yet, We don't ever get the opportunity. Staff does. And now I get an email today from Director DeAndrea, addressed to me and the rest of you, and Interim Hargrove, that you're gonna build a berm in our alley. That is not the solution. That's a Band-Aid, and I do expect to talk to an engineer. I sent her a response. I don't know if any of you seen it, but a berm is not the solution. We are a year out. Nobody's heard from us. Nobody cares about us. You can say you do, but we all know that you don't. We had 7 people out of our block. Matthew actually had talked at some point in time about us having a block party this year. Guess what? We can't. We had 6 displaced homeowners or renters and 1 death. Our block was obliterated, and you want to build a berm. And the director doesn't even know where my house is because I don't even own a chain link fence. How is that acceptable? How can you live with yourselves day in and day out knowing that every single day, that's what I do. I look at my weather app, I drive the neighborhood to make sure nobody's houses are flooding. When was the last time you came to our houses? When was the last time you came and talked to us? No. Instead, I believe, for some reason, and it's only an assumption, but I'll keep digging, somehow Eric Keck is still involved in this. Somehow he is still involved with the city manager, the mayor, the city attorney, because nothing has happened. We deserve better than that. You're lucky I took half of a Valium tonight because I was really upset about 2 hours ago. And if you don't care about putting a pipe in the ground, I haven't even seen a hydrology report from Caliber. You tell me, is that all right? I don't think it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Elaine Holtz. I don't see her. So next is Mr. Doug Cohn, an Englewood resident, here to address council regarding historic preservation.
Good evening. Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. I want to show you another number 2 in the series of short stories about Englewood history. I want to start by reading the obituary I found for Tom and Mary Scarrett.
Speak up a little.
Okay. The obituary for Tom and Mary Scarrett. There was no phase of frontier life with which they were not familiar, and they added in the planting of seeds of civilization upon the western plains, their labors constituting an important element in the development of the region in which they established their home. They were people of genuine worth, enjoying warm regard with all who came into contact with them, and the family has remained a respected one in Englewood. They had several children. One child, John, was a county commissioner, then the sheriff, then the treasurer. But how about we do part 2 of the movie? Tom Scarrett, father of Englewood.
The city of Englewood presents Englewood Moments in History. The story of how Englewood came to be a city cannot be told without chronicling the life of the colorful pioneer Thomas Scarrett. On August 16, 1828, Scarrett, the man who would later be known as the father of Englewood, Colorado, was born in Parsonstown, Kings County, Ireland. At only 20 years old, Scarrett fled his Irish homeland in the Great Potato Famine that killed 1 million people his 16-year-old bride, Mary, Skerritt rolled into the Denver area with 75 prairie schooners in tow. The couple eventually built a cabin and farmed the area that would later become the small settlement of Petersburg. Sadly, due to the Great Denver Flood of 1864, they lost the farm to foreclosure. 5 years later, inspired by the prospect of the new city irrigation ditch, Skerritt and his neighbor Joseph Brown rode to the capital of the territory in Golden, Colorado. There, Skerritt laid claim to a 640-acre homestead that encompassed what we now call Englewood, Colorado. With land for his new home secured, he moved his cabin to the new site. He raised vegetables, livestock, and maintained an orchard on the land. Sadly, frontier life was not without its hardships. On several occasions, the Skerritts were forced from their homestead when Indians were on the warpath. Miraculously, the cabin was untouched each time they returned. It still remains at 3560 South Brannock Street to this day. Now that boundaries for what would become Englewood had been established, it was time to incorporate. In the early 1900s, Englewood was a rough and lawless town. The landscape was dotted with 7 saloons, a grocery store, and 2 brothels. Shootings and stabbings were a common occurrence. Fed up with debauchery, citizens demanded an election to form a new city, and Englewood was incorporated in May of 1903. What had been the lawless hamlets of Sherilyn, Fisk Gardens, and Orchard Place united to become the great city we know today. And it all started right here in what we now call Englewood, Colorado.
Thank you.
You have one member has a question, Member Barentine.
How many installments are you planning of this?
Well, we're not sure yet. We have 94 stories.
Well, we only got up to 1903, so I was wondering if you...
The next one is going to be the mayor's election of 1903 and the story about Jacob Jones keeping order in the city council meeting by explaining to people they had only 5 minutes to speak. And with that, he pulled out his 6 gun and put it on the table.
Little has changed.
That's part 3. We have 93 more parts after that.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This ends a scheduled public comment. Next is a recognition of unscheduled public comment. The same thing that I read earlier is true. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there won't be any dialogue. And you'll please limit your time to 3 minutes. First up tonight is Mr. Lester Myers. I'm here to speak about Airbnb trash and ADUs, maybe.
Several comments on, I'm Lester Myers from 4195 South Clarkson Street here in Englewood. And I
Restart the time,
all the
please.
support and help that you've given us here in the years past and stuff, but there's still a few items that I wanted just to kind of remind you about that we've talked about in the past. And one of them is the Airbnbs, which we definitely do not want in our neighborhood if we can keep that from happening or whatever. The income properties and stuff, or it's okay as long as it's, just not too many people moving into one little space and in one night or whatever. We've had like 15 cars in just this one property in just the last couple of years here now. And it has kind of slowed down since it's been put on the market, so hopefully that'll get resolved also, and thank you. Also with the Airbnbs, I've been kind of watching the news and stuff, and I've seen on the news where Denver is requiring the owner of the property to live on the property. And I wonder if that's anything that we've ever given consideration here. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are on that, but I'd like to see that happen also, because there's a lot of trash buildup and stuff around there when he's not here. When the owner lives in Washington, I believe, or someplace else. But Another item that we talked about was the alleys and stuff, and it looks like we have started on some of the alleys, and I want to thank you for any support and help you've given us on that also, because we did get our alley partially paved so far in the last month here now or so. And another item was the rental properties and stuff that are going in, like just here on Laddie, and there's a triplex being built there where it was originally just a single complex and stuff. And it looks like, and I understand it's only required to have one parking space just for one bedroom, for each bedroom unit or whatever, from what I understand. And I'd like to see that raised to 2 if there's any way possible, because 90% of the time, if you've got even a one-bedroom unit, you've still got a husband and wife living there, and both of them are drivers. And so any support and help we can get with that, I would like to appreciate also. But again, thanks again for all your support and help.
Thank you. Member Cuesta has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. I appreciate the information. Can you give me your address one more time, sir?
4195 South Clarkson Street.
And you're thinking that there might be an Airbnb on your block currently, or it's up for sale?
Oh, it's for sale right now. It's yeah,
understood. Thank you, sir.
Had several calls on that just in this last week again also, and don't let them put an Airbnb in there. But
very good. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Felicity Day, here to speak about in-home daycare in R1A.
Hello, my name's Felicity Day. I live at 4825 South Delaware. I am addressing you today for an issue I've been having for me starting an in-home child daycare, a small in-home child daycare. I've been in contact with zoning and stuff like that, and according to where I am, it's zoned R1A, that it is a conditional use permit, and the fee is $500 for me to have a maximum of 6 children, in my case 4, considering I have 2, for me to simply teach and watch children 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, from the hours of 7 to 5 p.m. And $500 to me is a big fee. I've been in contact with Mr. Cuesta, emailing back and forth to see what this $500 goes to. It's, in my case, $500 is 2 weeks worth of pay for an in-home child care. And I am offering quality child care. I've been a preschool teacher for 10 years. So I'm not a babysitter. I will not be just sitting child in front of TV all day. And that is 2 weeks of pay from any business, what they would be upset for, giving you that pay. And so I am here asking, one, if there can be maybe a provision or a way where we can separate in-home child daycare in zoning differently than dependent care as it is now, and to look at this $500 fee. I want to know what it goes towards, and I want to know why it's so expensive. I've been licensed with the state, and with my trainings and everything put together, it's less than $500 to start my business so far. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I think the business that I am starting for the city of Englewood would be crucial to the community, because the moms, I'm a leader of a moms group in the area, and every mom that I've talked to is in need of childcare. There is a childcare crisis within the entire country right now. You go to put a child in daycare and you have a 1-year waiting list or more just to get your kid in daycare. So I feel like where I'm going with my business, there should be a way where we can give small in-home daycares a chance to open up without an astronomical fee and without having to go through this conditional use permit process in order to open up. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Member Barentine has a question for you.
So that I could look up the zoning again, could you give your address unless you
Yes, 4825 South Delaware.
That question came up during study session, so I'm sure it'll be talked about later.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Mike Sandgrin, here to speak about homeless assessment.
Good evening. My name is Mike Sandgrin. I live at 640 East Jefferson Avenue. I'm also on staff at Wellspring Church here in Englewood as the Director of Compassion Ministry, a role in which I lead programming focused on poverty alleviation in our local community. In addition, I lead the Change the Trend network, which seeks to foster collaboration around addressing homelessness. I'm here tonight to voice my support for the proposed IGA between Englewood, Littleton, Sheridan, and Arapahoe County to contract with the Burns Center for Poverty and Homelessness to conduct a study of families experiencing homelessness and individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. This study is a good idea for a number of reasons. First, national best practices with regard to effectively addressing homelessness suggest that garnering comprehensive, reliable data is an essential first step. This study would allow us to establish a metric from which to develop a strategic plan and to measure the impact of our work. Second, the data would allow for the responsible investment of resources into initiatives that can be specifically targeted to have the most impact. Third, this data would not only be a resource for city and county governments. As a service provider myself and the leader of a network of service providers, I can assure you that private organizations across the region are eager to get our hands on this information in order to ensure our own efforts are having the best impact possible. We can't afford to pay for the study ourselves, but the result would absolutely be empowering to us. This study is also uniquely appropriate for the moment in which our community finds itself. I mentioned a couple moments ago that garnering data is an essential first step in addressing homelessness. Another step is to develop organization and cooperation amongst ground-level service providers. We have this organization in our community, as well as synergy in our working relationship with the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group. The service providers in our city and region are ready to work together in collaboration with our city to develop a plan to tackle this issue in a comprehensive manner. We are, at this point, patiently waiting for the study to move forward. Change the Trend has already been in preliminary conversation about how we can support the Burns Center's efforts by hosting shelter nights, offering our spaces to conduct surveys, mobilizing our volunteers to help with outreach efforts, etc. We believe in this initiative enough to get our skin in the game to make it successful. Finally, the offer of the county to fund the family study reduces the overall cost to each city by over 50%. Additional support from community partners would bring the cost down even further. Given this price deduction, along with the potential of the study to empower all sectors of the community to move into a posture of proactivity rather than reactiveness with regards to addressing homelessness, I'm fully in support of moving forward with this IGA. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no questions. Thank you very much for coming. Next is Ms. LynnAnn Huizlgh, here to speak about homeless assessment. LynnAnn, sorry, I think I said LynnAnn.
It's okay. LynnAnn Huizlgh, Severe Weather Shelter Network, and we are providing emergency shelter in your city, as well as throughout Jefferson County and West Arapahoe County. So I just come briefly to speak in favor of the Burns study. I know as an organization that is seeking to provide emergency shelter on those life-threatening winter nights, for us to have a good sense of who is on the street and why they're on the street is important. It helps us engage more fully with Change the Trend in a productive manner so that we're actually walking alongside people to assist them in their desire to get off the street sooner rather than later. In addition, it also helps us to identify volunteers and to mobilize those volunteers in such a way that it is a benefit to the city of Englewood, Sheridan, and Littleton, in that the city is not paying for any of the shelter that we provide. It's not paying for a lot of the services that are provided boots on the ground. So I would encourage this organization, this city council, to support the IGA between the county and the three cities so that we can move forward in a productive manner and actually reduce the impact of homelessness in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions. Thank you very much for coming. Next up is Ms. Marcy Brown. No topic given.
Marcy Brown, District 1. At the last council meeting, I parked on the second floor, the second level of the parking garage right outside these doors. I walked up to a friend and we both saw a young man visibly upset. We asked him if something was wrong and he said, yes, my bicycle has been stolen. We told him there was a policeman inside and he should report the incident. We walked him in. He told the officer that his bike had been stolen, and the officer said, well, bikes get stolen all the time. I asked the officer, do you have any cameras in the parking lot? And he said, no. And the young man walked away disgusted. The officer never advised him to make out a police report, never said, sorry, this happened to you, or even asked if he needed to make a phone call to find a way home. After witnessing this conversation, the first word that came to my mind was apathy. I'm not singling out any department because I think that indifference has somehow creeped into our city government. Whether you're an appointed official, an elected official, or an employee of the city, I believe this attitude begins at the top and trickles down. I am in no way suggesting that everyone in the city does not listen to its citizens' needs. It's not my intention to suggest that, because I know some do listen and offer encouragement to their constituents. I've experienced that kindness firsthand. However, I think that things have been a bit skewed when it comes to our city government. Your citizens have a right to try and change things in the city they deem to be irresponsible or detrimental to their neighbors and neighborhoods. The city should be listening to our concerns rather than us always listening to what our officials want. We may disagree what the priorities of our community should be, but please listen to our suggestions, take an interest, don't dismiss them. I know I've been up here several times asking for a moratorium on this overbuilding. That request has been ignored. I've asked for a moratorium on other development until the new city manager can assess the situation. That request has been ignored. Now I'm asking for a moratorium until the city can figure out what this development is doing to Englewood's infrastructure, because we know it's all pretty bad. You may not agree with me or what others have to say, but as city officials, in whatever capacity you serve our city, you represent us, the taxpayers. It's not supposed to work the opposite way. In closing, I'd like to recite a quote. Science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings. Helen Keller. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Nathan Hoag, here to speak about a homelessness study.
Good evening, Council. My name is Nathan Hoag. I live at 3198 South Bannock, and I lead a church that meets at 3220 South Acoma. Although I'm usually here to speak on behalf of Change the Trend, tonight I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my family, and my church. Tonight I want to talk to you about an opportunity on the horizon I think we would be foolish to overlook. I'll start with a quick story and then make my case. The location of our house and our church building, along with our open door policy at both locations, has resulted in a lot of overlap between my family and our homeless neighbors. We meet people all the time who sleep in our alley on occasion or stop by for a meal or a shower. Instead of teaching my kids who are 2, 4, 5, and 9 that these neighbors are dangerous or people to be feared, we've tried our best to model for them a non-anxious generosity that treats people, human beings just like us. The result has been my kids have learned the names and the stories of these people. When we haven't seen them for a while, they ask about our homeless neighbors by name. Recently, we helped one of our homeless neighbors move into their first apartment in years, and my kids were right there with us. They got to see that transition in full, and I hope they never forget that day. The reason why this story is important is because in learning to care for our neighbors, we've learned one very valuable thing. You can't effectively care for someone you don't know. Knowing someone, knowing their needs, their situation, their story, their desires, their reasons, allows you to help them in a very specific way. One of the biggest problems cities face in confronting homelessness is that we treat these people like they're all the same. We make an assumption or a generalization about a group, and we miss the opportunity to care for people where they have actual needs. This is one of the major contributing factors to the inability of most cities to make meaningful strides in confronting homelessness. And that is why I believe an in-depth, comprehensive study like the Burn Center study is absolutely essential in confronting the issue of homelessness in Englewood. We can't care for what we don't know. We will be shooting for a moving target without a proper study of what homelessness is in the Tri-Cities area. Additionally, the Burn Center study will provide valuable information that will help my family and my church dramatically in our attempt to care for these individuals. We need better information, better data, if we're going to keep caring for these neighbors, and if we are to pursue solutions to this persistent problem and challenge in our community. Without the study, we will continue to shoot at a moving target to no avail. I realize that a study like the Burn Center study is unprecedented in Englewood, but that's not a good reason not to do it. Precedent has not stopped us before from making courageous decisions. Anything worth doing requires courage, and I believe the Burn Center study is no different. So, Council, do we as a city have the courage to approve a study alongside Arapahoe County, Littleton, and Sheridan? Do we have the courage to actually get to know the people who live and work among us every single day? Do we have the courage to care strategically rather than haphazardly? And do we have the courage to pursue something like this that would allow us to know the people that are living on the streets in our community and who are, in fact, our citizens? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine has a question for you.
I appreciate the your church and the service that you help to do and how your family gets involved. A lot of us here have done the same. I think what would help, and I'm not so sure that it takes courage necessarily just to do more money at a study, but I think what we were missing, the question that was being asked, was how would we actually put it to use? What is the information we're looking for? It's more than likely that this study is going to happen. It's going to take 8 months, and a lot can happen in that period of time. So are you guys going to actively present some ways that this information can be utilized rather than yet another study? And many people feel the pain of one more study for a lot of issues that maybe we can't implement. So I hope your group really works to doing that process. Are you guys prepared during the period of time that they're doing that study to bring forward some information on how it can actually be implemented or utilized, how we can put it to some use? I hope that comes forward. If you don't have an answer right now, that's fine.
I do have an answer to, I think the question, the answer is yes, we are preparing to do that.
Do you have a list of ways that study information would be useful in implementing services right now? Because if you do, I would really like to have that presented sooner than later.
I can make that request. I do not have that with me at this time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Stephen Schreiner, I believe, here to speak about short-term rentals.
Good evening. My name is Stephen C. Schreiner. I live at 4935 South Grant Street. That's the Bellwood subdivision, and it's listed as a R1B. That's Romeo 1 Bravo category for multi-use districts. And what I found from the short-term rental study session is that it's not allowed in my neighborhood, and I think that's a very good thing. I would object strenuously. I have a house empty next to me, and the realtor thinks he can do this. Things I noticed from the study that would disallow that are he has to show proof of homeowner residency on or in that property, and at least 9 to 10 months a year. He has never lived in that property, and the previous owner doesn't live there either. It is empty. Okay, 1 parking space per resident would not be sufficient. He wants to rent it out to 6 different people with 6 different bedrooms. Well, a lot of the houses in the neighborhood are 6 bedrooms. Some have been converted to storage space and offices, such as in my house, but I still have bedrooms, none of which are for rent. The compliance code raising the state lodging tax from 7.14% to 29% would help discourage this tremendously. I have a question of the panel. What is an ADU of a primary resident? ADU being an abbreviation. The question was asked during the study session. Primary resident definition needs to be signed and notarized, and it needs to be punishable for a violation. And then somebody commented on an ADU, and I'm not familiar with what an ADU is. Egress rules. There's a hill between me and the adjacent property, of which I own half and he owns most of. But it's covered with rock, and he wants to build an egress unit, which I call a burglar hole. And I'm not really too keen on that, but if he wants to do it on his half of that hillside, that's his business. Covenants and pre-existing codes cannot be overridden. I like that a lot, because it certainly applies in my case. And businesses, and I would consider rental of rooms a business, are not allowed in R1 areas in which I live. And I would really be opposed to this. I can see where some other sections of the city can use it, but not in my neighborhood, and I'm representing 6 other households immediately across or adjacent to that property, and they don't like it one bit. They don't want to see it happen there. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Barentine has a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Point of clarification first, ADUs and accessory dwelling unit. We can go into that some other time.
Excuse me, is that another name for a grandmother
It's another house on, yeah, granny flat kind of thing. The study session, and this was the strongest that I had heard it put, is that there is no doubt that they are not legal now. Short-term rentals are not legal now, whether people feel it's firm or not. But was there some confusion? Do they believe that they're legitimate to go ahead and do this short-term rental?
The realtor indicated to me he intended to go ahead with this, and I told him that it was a single-family residence area only, and he wasn't aware of that. And I did really kind of expect to see him down here tonight, and he's not here.
All right, and you do know that there are several that are currently being prosecuted?
Yes, in Denver. Yes, very much so.
No, here.
No, I wasn't aware of any here in town.
There are short-term rentals currently in our municipal court system. They are not allowed here currently.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Thank you for coming tonight. Next is Mr. Mike Linebaugh, I think, here to speak in general. Did I get that right?
Linebaugh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Mike Linebaugh, District 1, resident for 40 years here in Englewood. Been a construction in 47 years. Just a little bit of constructive criticism. I've known every mayor here since Eugene Otis. Last July 3rd, I would refrain, Councilman Costa, from berating another council member. I would do that behind closed doors. I think that would be a more appropriate way to do that. Councilwoman Barentine, I think you should legislate a little more and quit agitating.
Okay.
I think it would, citizens would appreciate that. As I said, I've known a lot of mayors here. I've seen this city. It's a great city. It's a great place to raise kids. For Council Member Wink, Martinez, and Sierra, I don't know you that well. I'm getting to learn you. Please study and research with an open heart and mind. A third of the citizens in this city are 60 years and older. They may lose their homes. They're afraid. They're afraid of development. I've watched it happen in Cherry Creek. Do your due diligence. We have infrastructure problems. Cherry Creek went through the same growth problems. They came in, they tried to put liners in the sewers. It just doesn't happen that way. They end up coming through and tearing it out. There's other ways to get money, like in Cherry Creek. at the very beginning in 1990, it was like $100 for a water tap and maybe, I think, $500 for sewer. They raised them to like $5,000 and $20,000. You can do a workers' tax for everybody that's here doing construction and make them pay a fee in that. It gains revenue for the city and will help. You're not going to stop development. It's going to come. I mean, we're not Traverse City. This is Denver. A lot of people want to come here. It's great weather. There's a lot to do here, and they know it, and they're going to come. And that's why a lot of developers are coming here right now, because they know it's a quick in and they can get out. So really, you guys have to really look at this and kind of get a hold on it, because if you don't, they're going to strangle you. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you for coming tonight. Next is Mr. Ivan Erwin, I believe, here to speak about quality of life.
Ivan Erwin, 4025 South Jason Street. First, I would like to express my gratitude and the gratitude of many of people that my wife and our neighbor got petition signed. They're very grateful for the 4 members of council who voted against the PUD at Sports Authority. The reason I'm standing here is that in the material that I saw, I'm 99% certain that planning and zoning said that that density of 315 units was exactly what Englewood wanted. I'm here to say that of the people my wife and the neighbor contacted, 95%, it's exactly what they do not want. So I'd like to say that on record and hope planning and zoning can hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. John Melson, here to speak about marijuana.
Sorry about being a little vertically
Okay.
challenged. I'm John Nelson, 2700 West Union Avenue, and also an advocate for medical marijuana. I'm formerly with M&R Roofing, located right at 2706 West Union Avenue. Since I broke my neck and some of the other guys are getting old, we're going to start trying to turn M&R into, we would like to turn M&R into a marijuana grow / dispensary. I know that it's been voted that only a certain amount are allowed in Englewood. Mr. Roble, the owner of the company of M&R Roofing, currently does own another dispensary, but it's in Denver, and it's quite costly with him being a business owner in Englewood and having to run his business out of Denver. And what we're hoping to do, since we're too old to roof anymore, is turn M&R Roofing into a grow / dispensary as maybe, you know, the first few steps, or one of the first few steps for us as a community to start reaping the rewards of marijuana, which is obviously here to stay. So I've been told we need to check on zoning and all those kind of things before it would even be considered, but I would have to present it before I could move forward, or we could move forward to see if it's a possibility or if it's even feasible. So I guess that's all I have to say about it.
All right, thank you.
Is there, one thing I am confused on, is there like an application process, or is it just a flat out yes or no?
There is a process, and if you listen right after this, Councilmember Martinez will be responding with comments tonight to everyone, and she will be able to direct to a city employee to make sure that they get in touch with you on this one.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Next is Ms. Tami Williamson, here to speak about short-term rentals, I believe.
Hello, I'm Tami Williamson, 4198 South Washington. Finally, the short-term rental that was next door to me for 2 years was finally shut down. It only took over a year and, begging and pleading and crying in public to get planning and zoning to actually do the job. Unfortunately, our struggle's not over. The owner is now selling the house as an income potential property, stating that the basement can be now rented out as an apartment. And again, I have to remind the city staff that clearly stated in Englewood's own code book, R1C single-family residential zones are defined as one family per lot. That's all it says. It's so simple. You may not turn a house in my zone into apartments. Wade Burkholder is letting this happen to us again. The realtor told Mike and Donna Jones the illegally modified garage can be used as an artist studio, which it can't. The only thing you can use that thing for is to park a car. And that the DA's office didn't want to deal with the situation, but were forced to do so because of pressure put on them by the next door neighbor. Meanwhile, Burkholder and the Good Old Boys Club at Planning and Zoning are pushing through the legalization of STRs in all neighborhood zones, including mine. So they really don't have to do any enforcing that they never really did in the first place. And if you pass this before that house next to me sells, you can imagine how screwed I'm gonna be for good. It's gonna suck. And I warned council that ADUs and STRs go hand in hand when you were voting on the ADUs. And legalizing those would not ease any affordable housing crisis, as most of them are and will be used as alley motels. And now, look, they want to allow STRs in the ADUs. And there will be nowhere to escape from these things because they want it in all zones. Again, you can't have a housing crisis when you're taking housing away from people to use for Airbnbs. You can't have both. It's one or the other. So either you stop letting them rampantly build the apartments, or you let them go loose with all their little motels that turn neighborhoods on their ear. So when council was fooled into voting yes to the ADUs, I didn't have a pregnant belly to wave around, and all, pointedly not mentioning what I would be doing with my ADU during the 10 months family would not be there. Wrapped in a witty catchphrase, what was it, something stagnation. After only 20 months of having STRs and ADUs shoved down my throat, I now have the big fat stress belly I can bounce in front of you. And my catchphrase is, leave my zone alone. I want it out of the language.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no questions. Thank you for coming tonight. That ends our unscheduled public comment time. And tonight, Member Martinez is going to do the response.
All right, well, that was a lot of comments. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It was great to see so many folks here with us and to see how many people are really invested and take the time to come and share their thoughts with us. I'll just go through. It won't take up too much time, but I'll go through and address some folks. Mr. Nixon, Chair of ACE, thank you for coming and sharing your suggestions and the work that your group has been doing. Really looking forward to seeing those recommendations and putting some of those into play. Mr. Walker, thanks for coming, and I'm glad we all agree on the safety of our citizens is very important. The stormwater study, folks, a theme that I heard a lot of tonight is that things take too long. And, I think that's why one reason people get really frustrated with local government is things take too long. It takes too long. Let's do it faster. And I definitely agree. Things are taking a long time with the stormwater and the short-term rentals, and everything takes some time. And so thanks for sticking with us through all of the discussions and all of the studies and all of the implementations. I know it's frustrating, but we want to get to the right solution, so sometimes it takes a lot of discussions and a lot of time. So that's just a general statement. Let's see. I appreciate the folks who talked about the stormwater study and Mr. Schultz wanting us to include the S3 pipes. I appreciate the input on that. And this is another great example of what can happen when we defer things and put things off and don't give things the proper maintenance and care over a lot of time that it deserves. We can end up in big trouble. And so we need to stop doing that and put funding, proper amount of funding where it should be and all the time. I mean, you know, things would be a whole different scenario if over the last 60 years we had done a little bit different on a lot of paths. So I think it's a buildup of a lot of things, and we can't just Band-Aid. We need to really put the proper care and maintenance into everything that we do, particularly infrastructure. This is a perfect example of that. Same with Vicki Hoffmann. Thanks for coming continually and sharing your thoughts with us. Hopefully we'll come up with a solution somewhat soon to this, the stormwater pipes. Mr. Cohn, thanks for sharing your history. I look forward to seeing many more of these videos, so keep coming and sharing them. Let's see, what else? To the folks that came and talked about short-term rentals, really appreciate the thoughts on that too. Similar to the stormwater, there's always so many things to consider, and if any of you were in our study session, you heard that the planning and zoning folks have had 14 study sessions on this topic. They've been studying it for probably 2+ years, because there's a lot of things to consider on every piece of the puzzle. There's so many things to weigh, and so this is part of why, you know, things take time. We want to take our time and do it right. So let's see, what else? Ms. Day, thank you for coming and talking to us about your in-home daycare that you're looking for. I have a council request on this one, is what does the $500 fee include, and how did we arrive at that dollar amount? And what does the conditional use permit process entail? What's involved in that process? To all the folks, Mike Sandgrin with Change the Trend, thanks for coming and sharing your thoughts. And also, I'm going to butcher your name, LynnAnn Huizlgh. It's
LynnAnn
Huizlgh. It was okay, getting closer to that. And Mr. Hoag, thank you for all of your support in the burn study. I agree, we should definitely, it's a really important thing for us to do. Again, it will take time, but I think it's really important to do the study and the research so we can get actual data and make data-based decisions, particularly as it relates to implementing solutions. We want to make sure that we're moving the needle, and we can't, if we don't have that data, it's just a guess, and that guess doesn't get us anywhere better for the long term. So I'm really supportive of the study. Also, I would like to just understand what the next steps for that study are. So I don't know, I guess that would be a council request on the list. You don't have to respond right now unless you want to.
Well, I will say that it's coming back to council for consideration at a regular meeting, tentatively scheduled for August 5th, but that's depending on the mayor-manager agenda setting.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. Let's see, what else? To Ms. Brown that came and asked about the moratorium. My council request is just what steps would be involved in considering some type of moratorium. What steps would be involved in implementing something like that? Let's see, what else? Thanks to Mr. Schreiner that came and shared your perspective on the short-term rentals. It's helpful to know that you don't think it's a good fit for your neighborhood, but see the benefit in some parts of our city, so that is helpful for me to understand where you're coming from on that. Let's see, what else? Mr. Linebaugh, are you still here? Thank you for coming and giving us each some constructive criticism. We're always open to that, so thanks for the feedback there. Mr. Erwin, appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts on the quality of life and thanking some of us for how we voted. And Mr. Nelson, are you still here? You're still here. Thanks for coming, and my council request is just to have someone connect with him on the process and steps for applying for that type of business. And Ms. Williamson, thank you for coming again and sharing your thoughts. And I'm glad the next door neighbor situation is getting resolved. I understand there are still some, possible unintended consequences that you may have to, go through with a potential sale of your house next door. Hopefully, it will not turn out that way. And thank you again for being patient through this long process that you've gone through with us. And I think I talked to everybody. I think that's enough of me talking. Thank you.
If you would indulge me for a minute, I would like to go a little bit further on what Mr. Schultz brought up with the S3 piece of it. I think there was not an oversight, but maybe an oversight on my part of explaining what the next steps would be. The study session that we did, S1 and S2, we ran out of time and we ended. We definitely have to go on to the next stage, and maybe the city manager, I know at the end tonight, was going to give us some update. Mayor manager and I had set some time on July 22nd for the Downtown Development Authority at our study session, but I understand that that's going to be taken off, and so maybe what we can do is make sure that we do pick up on the S3 part of that discussion and S4, that we maybe have a little bit of time to then figure out what are we going to do next, because I don't think anyone intended that we wouldn't continue to work through the caliber study, but perhaps it's that conversation that night. Member Cuesta.
Thank you. Thank you. One subject that came up in the study session I feel was kind of a minor component in a few of the topics we had tonight was whether or not a business can be operated in R1. And can we get some clarification on that as well, please? And I think that would impact several of the things that we've gone over thus far. Thank you.
Great council request. Thank you. All right. I think that's it, and we'll go over them tomorrow, make sure we got them all as well. But just, Mayor Pro Tem and I kind of go over everything we think might have been missed or not, and make sure that we have all the council requests. So agenda item 8 is communications, proclamations, and appointments, and we have recognition of newly appointed boards and commission members tonight. As we become settled up front to give you a certificate, I just want to say thank you to those who do continue to serve, have served in Englewood on these boards and commissions. They're involved with the beauty and the culture and the safety of the city through these boards. They ensure that our city offers housing assistance to those in need, to resources for new and existing businesses, as we heard about tonight, and they contribute even to a bird's eye and a very specific view to balancing our budget. So the board and commission members offer expertise in ways that the staff and the council cannot always give, and so we really appreciate what these commissions and boards do. If I could have all of council get up front so we can welcome any new members, and then we're going to give out certificates and pins. Mayor Pro Tem and I will stand off on the left side, and the city clerk will read names off of those who are newly appointed to boards and commissions. All right, can everybody hear me?
Do you want me to go ahead and announce? Okay. All right, so for Alliance for Commerce in Englewood is Jason Whyte. Budget Advisory Committee, Chelsea Nunnenkamp. Donna Woods. And Joel Moore. All right, so for Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, we have Colleen Moore. Matthew Collins. Fury Giusti. and Carson Green. All right, so for the Cultural Arts Commission, we have Dana Folks and Lee Beth Pohl. Keep Englewood Beautiful is Hetty Anselman. And Margot Flynn. All right, so for the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have Kate Fuller and Carl Adams. All right, and so for the Transportation Advisory Committee, we have Brianne Plasters. We'll get those out to them.
Thank you to everyone who came out. And for those who weren't here, we'll make sure that we get those mailed off to you. Our next agenda item is consent agenda items. Could I have a motion to approve 9B1?
I move to approve 9B1.
I'll second. Thank you. Please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Okay, we have no public hearing tonight, so on to 11, ordinances, resolutions, and motions. 11A1, we are actually going to, I think the manager wants to pull it tonight. There's a mistake in actually which county this is with. It's in the document, it reads, I believe, Jefferson, not Arapahoe. Do you want to speak to this?
Douglas. It was a clerical
Douglas.
error on our part, and I would recommend council consider tabling this. It's not time sensitive, and I'd rather have the documentation correct.
Okay. All right. So do you want us to vote on tabling it? Just leave it. Please vote. Okay, please vote to table it to a date not certain, right? Is it, or to the next meeting?
It'll definitely be ready for the next meeting.
Okay, great. Then August 5th. Please vote to defer it to August 5th.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. The next is 11C1, resolutions and motions, the approval of change orders with Security Central Incorporated for Police Headquarters Building. Staff recommends approval of change order number 3 related to the installation of egress crash bars and wireless entry buttons, as well as an approval of change order number 4 related to the parking lot access at 2 vehicle gates and 1 main gate with Security Central. Here to present is Public Works Director Maria DeAndrea. Is she here? I do not see her.
I know she's in the building.
Would you, we can hold this one off. We haven't done anything yet. We'll move on to 11C2. This is an award of contract to PLM Asphalt. Also, though, it's Maria Tandra. So hopefully she's okay, because I did see her out there earlier as well. She's coming in? Okay, great.
Apparently coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Director DeAndre. We're on 11C1.
Thank you.
So we're ready to ask questions of you, or have you?
Yes, I'll just stand for questions with the Security Central item.
Right, are there questions from council on this one? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve agenda item 11C1, approval of change orders with Security Central Incorporated for Police Headquarters Building.
Okay. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All right, now, comments that I think Mayor Pro Tem wanted to say something, so.
Well, and I do have a question. Why the third change order, it looks like you were bringing it forward, but it already got approved. didn't need to be brought forward? I mean, why didn't all these things get brought forward at the same time as change orders?
Yes, that was my mistake. So I had misinterpreted the procurement policy and when items needed to come to council. So if you look at the spreadsheet, which was the first attachment, it's the procurement policy states that when the change orders summarily come over 10%, then it has to come to council. So that was my mistake when I brought forward, I did not bring change order number 3 to council, and I should have. So I'm asking to rectify that mistake tonight by asking council to approve both change order number 3 and change order number 4.
What would happen if we didn't approve change order number 3? It's already been done.
That's correct. It's already been installed, so we are backing council into a corner.
Councilmember Bernstein.
It was my understanding that last time that we had the change order that was going to be the end of it so that we could have a number. What prompted, I mean, it couldn't have just been number 3 because we're getting a bunch of other change orders too, and we already had what I thought was the final.
Yes, that I did say that. That was for the main contractor, Adolphson and Peterson, but I did not account for the change orders for the parking lot, which will be this one for Security Central, and then you will see one on August 5th for the video surveillance cameras through Presidio. And I am going back and double checking that none of these other errors have occurred in any of our other contracts for the police building.
Regardless of whether there are change orders or not, what I believed what we were getting last time was the final amount of what it was costing us. And it seems like we're dividing this into what's change orders, and then, well, it was the parking lot, but that still would have cost us money and changed the bottom line number of what was left over of the bond money. So we need to kind of be on the same page of what we're saying, because I thought the last number, we had an amount of money left over that we would be able to work with, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So regardless of whether it's a change order or are we finally going to get a final number of what this is? We're fast running out of what money is there. When can we expect that we've got that final number?
Yes, I think we're very close to that. So to your point, in the last budget that we went through, I did have $50,000 accounted in the budget for the Security Central and the Presidio work, the video surveillance, which you'll see. So we did account for it. We just have to come back and make the formal change order. So I will provide that final accounting, but it shouldn't change. If anything, it'll change very slightly from that $1 million that we were.
All right. Any further comments? All right, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you.
The next one is 11C2. Staff recommends approving by motion a contract with PLM Asphalt and Concrete LLC in the amount of $986,171.20 for the 2019 asphalt mill and overlay project with an allowance for a 10% contingency if needed. Again, Director Deandra is here, and Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
So one of the questions that I have, we were doing, I forget what they call that, where they were just topping off, what did they call that?
We used to do microsurfacing here,
Okay.
as well as slurry seal.
Slurry.
It was probably the slurry seal. I mean, because my husband and I were driving down the street the other day, and that really didn't work very well, did it? I mean,
We still want to keep that in our arsenal of tools, if you will, our tool in the toolbox. I think it has to be on the right street, so it has to be a road that's in good condition. And staff has to go out and seal the cracks, fill the cracks before you do that application. So we are planning to do that next year, but we don't have any of that planned for 2019.
okay, and so also, we are going to be doing the same thing on a yearly basis, right? We're rotating.
Correct. And so this year, we're just under $1 million. And then in Zone 1, which is generally the northeast quadrant of town, east of Broadway and north of US 285. And next year, we'll be in the southwest portion of town, generally west of Broadway and south of Oxford.
Okay,
And we'll
thank
be
you very
moving
much.
around the city in that 5-year cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Member Sierra.
Yeah, what would be the process for areas that aren't going to be covered as part of the Zone 1? And for instance, I'm just talking about like the inlets leading into the alleys. Some of those are pretty heavily damaged. So obviously, is that something that just a neighbor would have to just request, or to do that aspect of the asphalt? It's more of a patch than it is just the entire resurfacing of the street, so.
This is like where adjacent to an inlet, you said? So it's
Correct.
just like patching more so?
I would believe so.
Okay. Yeah, that's work that we could, if staff want, or if citizens wish to report that, we would do that probably in-house with our own staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Director DeAndrea. One of the components of what was presented to us is that door hangers will be distributed to the individual properties by the contractor approximately 4 to 8 hours to the start of work on a particular segment. How long could any house expect to have the work be ongoing in front of their property?
Yes, good question. So typically, we'll work with the contractor, in this case PLM, to determine how much they'll take within a given week. So typically, they'll work in a smaller area of, let's say, 5 to 6 blocks in a given area, and then they'll mill everything, so it could sit there for about a week, and then they might mill the next section of 5 to 6 streets, and then come back in and pave both of those sections over a couple of days. So you will see probably 2 to 3 weeks of activity in front of your house.
And what precisely would be inaccessible? What is closed down to there? Is it the sidewalk? Is it the curb as well?
No, so during the time when they're actually milling off the surface, it will be closed to traffic. But then as soon as that milling operation is done, usually that takes a couple hours on a given block, they'll be able to immediately park there again. And then that day when we go out to pave, they'll post the no parking signs, and then we'll either have to notify people, well, people will either have to move their cars just prior to that, we'll knock on doors to make sure they move, and then again, it's a couple-hour process to pave that street, and then they can be right back on it again.
And maybe I'm going too far with the questions, but I'm curious now. Will somebody actually block the street? And the reason I ask that, what if somebody doesn't get the notice, they park their car there anyways? It interrupts that section, would we have to come back, or are those spots just blocked?
Typically, what we'll do if knocking on the door, nobody responds, we do block off the street. We'll tow the vehicle just around the corner, and then either leave them a note or do something. So it's close. It's not like we tow it to an impound lot or anything, but we get it out of the way of where we need to be working.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further questions? All right, could I have a motion to approve 11C2, the award for contract to PLM Asphalt and Concrete LLC for the 2019 Mill and Overlay Project?
I move to approve 11C2.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
I second.
All right, any further conversation? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next up is general discussion and mayor's choice to begin with. I first of all wanted to clarify, and there's a lot of people gone, but last week when we were talking about council emails and whether or not we should be emailing each other, which we had agreed we wouldn't be doing because of the risk of violating state statute and also just creating a dynamic where one person has it's not equal conversation going on. Somehow some citizens thought that meant that they could not email all of us, and just want to encourage us all to remind people that it was more of an internal conversation with us. I've definitely sent out emails to people to say, feel free to email all of us, none of us, one of us, as many as you want, but we won't be replying all, because that is not a helpful way to respond and have it all be open to the to the entire public. And I'd encourage that we continue to use council requests as a way to get everything into the public realm so that all of us can see it all the time. And when it appears to be something that is urgent. I think our city manager, our interim city manager demonstrated today some things by sending it out right away to us. So perhaps that's the best way we could do that. Going forward, I'm sure with our new city manager, we may want to take up a conversation about how to do this even in a more technically savvy way. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure there's something. A couple things from last week. Had Water and Sewer Board met. Several of us were there. We only had one item of business that took care of that fairly quickly and was able to I think, hopefully move Citizen on to a next stage for something that he's dealing with. But again, I want to say thank you to Mr. Tom Brennan, who has already left our presence, but was his last meeting, and he started his new job, I believe, this week, but I still appreciate the work that he's done for the city. Thursday morning, the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Task Force met again, and we heard from Kristen Toombs, who is the Director of Office of Homeless Initiatives with the Division of Housing in Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA. It was incredibly informative. She and Matt Myers, who works with the Metro Denver Housing Initiative, have agreed to meet with us in a way that helps us to begin to strategize before any data is put together, as well as we begin to get data. So one of the things is knowing what the resources are available to push our policies towards, as well as our caregivers, because the city is not equipped as a city to do social services, but we can create policy as well as we can help direct to different resources, and most of us don't know what those are, so we're starting to gather some of that. Also, I think you heard tonight from Mr. Hoag that the county has agreed to chip in, and we'll be hearing more of that in the future. I think Manager Hargrove will give us an update on that. She's been involved with that. So it looks like there's some folks that are contributing to anything that we do with the study. Thursday afternoon, the county called together mayors and city staff and managers to ask for input on a number of things related to the CDBG grants that we get. And it was one of the first times that the county has reached out for input in this kind of way, where it's sort of a couple hours of looking at questions that they had and how we experience it. I was more of a silent partner, as Brad Power could speak to it more than I could, but it was nice to see the county really asking for input, genuinely wanting to be a partner in a number of things. This morning, I attended Mayor Hancock's inauguration with about 20 other mayors from the area, and our own Murphy Robinson, if you all remember. Our assistant city manager is, again, the deputy mayor for Denver, and he sends his regards. It was very fun to see him this morning. Dr. Cohn is Wednesday, so I hope to give you more of an update on that in the next meeting that we have. That's all for me right now, so I will do council requests next. You want to start down there? We'll come this way. I think we went that way last week.
You bet. One matter that I would like to raise, and I've sent it over, but publicly as well, is that I've had a neighbor reach out to me regarding the bypasses and the medians, or excuse me, the Hampton bypass, the Broadway medians at that intersection. That I know the fountain won't be repaired on that corner, but that it doesn't seem that those are up to the condition that they were a couple years ago, 3 years ago. And I know that last year we had trouble getting a vendor to get out there and service them, but he has brought it up that they seem to be in the same disrepair that they were in last season when we weren't able to pin somebody down. So he did ask me for further information, and those little aesthetics are important. And when people bring these things up, they matter. There's very big things in the city, but there's the little things too that add a nice touch. And so that was one thing that I did want to raise publicly. Secondly, I will be out of town from 8/7 to 8/14, so I will be missing that Monday study session. I did just want to mention that for my constituents. And then the final one is this news from yesterday that there was a shooting here in Englewood, and 2 folks were shot, and one passed away, and another, my understanding, is intensive care. And I know that the full information has not been released yet, and it's an ongoing investigation, but just absolutely heartbreaking. I can't even wrap my mind around it. It's brutal. And so I just want to say to all the citizens of Englewood who I know hear things like that and are just stunned by it, I am too, and it's tragic. And I think, again, ongoing investigation and everything is being done to, bring those folks to justice, but terrible. That is a tragedy in the community and really horrible. And so my heart goes out to the victims, the family victims, and again, everybody in the community, because that is very, very, very hard thing to happen for a city. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that as well. Member Barentine.
I appreciate all of the confusion that the discussion caused. It for whether citizens can go ahead and email everyone. I think it gives a lot of confusion to the public when they think that the staff can email all of council and citizens can email all of council, but no council member can talk to all of council. So it does skew a lot of information over that way. I do want to, since there was some legal issue brought up and somewhat, in some people's opinion, a threat to me legally by the mayor, that I wanted to clarify that in no way have I broken the law by emailing all of council. It would be them responding in their opinion, of which I disagree. I will wait for the new city manager, who seems to have a little bit more comfort with his leadership or the direction or the communication with council. At least I think that's the way it's going to be, and we can all have that conversation at that point. As of this time, what I'm doing is that I will put out on my own email, which is also very legal, and always was, to go ahead and communicate with everybody. I'll put it on the Facebook, and if council wants to contact me, they've always been welcome to have the conversation with me. So I'll just do it in the public at this point until we can have some way of having some very open, very transparent conversations instead of what's appeared to be some just kind of groups of this council getting together and doing things more behind closed doors, which I think is not fair to the public. I also am on the Water and Sewer Board, and I wanted to thank the chair of that board, former mayor and a council member, Clyde Wiggins, for recommending some of the people that came here on several occasions concerned about their South Englewood sanitation district and the additional charges they were being charged. He recommended that they went to that board, which they weren't aware existed, and one of those people was actually put on that board. And so we're going to, I'm sure they're going to be giving us some update for that area. It takes a big chunk of the south area of Englewood along with Littleton and others. So, and people that are following some of those issues for the charges that were happening in that area will come, I'm sure she'll come forward. It's Donna Jones, and I wanted to say congratulations to her. I think she must have done a very good job in presenting the question because they immediately wanted to put her on the board. So she'll be coming and doing some follow-up with the Water and Sewer Board, along with coming publicly to give some update on what they're going to be doing with some of those additional charges. And that's all I have. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Member Wink?
Thank you, Mayor Olson. I have one council request. In the event that an Englewood street sign is exchanged out, replaced, I've had citizens reach out with an interest in purchasing street sign, perhaps because they live there, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to guess the reason, but I would like to know if there's some vehicle that exists that's not too much draw or drain on our existing staff, through which we can allow citizens to, it's a revenue gain for us if the citizens want the signage, and I don't know otherwise what happens to the signs. I imagine they might go to a little grave at the wastewater treatment facility, but citizens are interested in, I won't say names out loud now. You can certainly email with me in closed doors, but I think it would be fun for citizens. Several have been very interested in this and excited about paying for their street signs. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
I met a delightful gentleman about 3 weeks ago when I was over walking in Romans Park, and his name is John Toll, and he was cleaning out the flower beds. He had planted a lot of the flower beds there along with other people, and I just want to thank him specifically. I did that day, but what are we doing to honor those people who are volunteering in our parks, because they're saving us some money, and we don't have to hire as much staff?
I'm glad you asked. I mean, the Parks and Rec Commission always has a volunteer recognition event to say thank you. It's not nearly enough of a thank you. I've been talking with our community relations specialist, Tony Arnaldi, about having a little broader city-wide volunteer event, and we've got some ideas to bring back to council that would include, celebrating those people and their efforts as well. Any ideas are most welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, I would like to bring up the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, the installation of the new members, and I just wanted to bring this up to the council and the public, that in the past, I have been on this committee for almost 4 years now, and there have been people that have been termed out, and the chairman specifically, and they came to the meeting and presided over the first part of the meeting, just like we do on city council. And I believe there has been some confusion over whether we do that or not, and I don't think we have anything specific in our policy manual or board and commission. So I would like to see that happen. I think there's been some miscommunication in the city, and so I wanted to bring this up to the board, to the council. So if anyone, is there any person here that wouldn't want us to do that?
Member Wink?
Thank you. I beg your pardon, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm actually not clear on what you're asking. Are you asking if there is any member among the 7 of us or 6 of us that doesn't want the chair that's outgoing at the last outgoing meeting to initiate the meeting and then vacate?
Well,
is that what you're asking?
Well, probably if there's any opposition. We have no policy.
But is that the thing? Like, if I'm being voted,
Right,
if I'm termed out, this is my last meeting, I'm going to show up, begin the meeting, and then announce the new chair and then leave. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
Basically.
I think that's what's been done.
Right, it has been done, so there was some confusion, and so.
I have never been on a committee where they came to the next one of the new thing, but we certainly can do it like that. If a person's termed out and wants to come back, certainly can. But I think we have some things that are not written in our policy at all on this as well as others. Manager?
I think part of the confusion occurred because of the delay in appointing board and commission members for this new term due to all the special meetings having to do with the hiring of the new city manager. The term of all the members who were considered for reappointment ended on July 1st. So technically, someone who was not reappointed is no longer officially on the board. I don't know that anyone would object to them coming. I think the question from some staff and committee members was whether the former chairman still had the authority to set the agenda and run the meeting and manage those. It's certainly a question for council, but that's, I think, where some of the confusion has come from.
Okay, and with all due respect, the deadline is July 1st, and that's really why we have the interviews and appointments the way we do, but not all boards meet on the first of the month. So the first month when things can change will be like the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee meets on the third Wednesday of the month. So this is still that month where they would be, and I don't want to make a big deal about it, but I just, it's happened in the past, and so unless there's an objection, I would just like to do it.
All right, are there any objections? No. Seeing none. All right, we'll make sure that we put this.
Some comments.
Oh, so are we bringing, do you want this to be an item that we talk about right now, all of us?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I think it was Councilmember Questa first.
You bet. The process I'm hearing described sounds more ceremonial and a passing of the torch from the outgoing person to the incoming, and I certainly have no objection to that. This might be one more thing we can add to the policy or the guidelines, just so it's enshrined and we're all aware of it, but there's certainly no objections here.
Great. Councilmember Berentine.
Certainly, that's the way that council does it, and since I've been involved in the board since 1997, that's the way that it's been done. I mean, I've been on quite a few boards and commissions, both privately and on council, and it's just a matter of formalizing it. It's inappropriate to expect people to do an agenda for that upcoming meeting when they're in transition, and so that's why it usually happens that way. It will be the council that sets the agenda for the incoming council. The new council doesn't set it because they don't actually have the authority yet. So just as a matter of process and keeping it consistent, I do have some personal concerns why this confusion all of a sudden happened with this particular board, but I'll keep them to myself.
Thank you. Member Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I have perhaps another consideration. We have co-chairs on our boards and commissions. Perhaps in this unusual circumstance, or if it's less common than not, or, well, less common, the co-chair then could set the agenda. Having been there alongside the chair for times in past and would be up to speed and abreast of everything needed, we could keep things simple. So just another consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one, well, there's a couple things that I would like to bring forward to a study session, and one of them is on changing the posting requirements for property owners regarding, there was a council request on that, and so I'm just wondering if we might be able to add that to a study session agenda.
I think that we call that public notifications. I think it's already scheduled for later in August.
Okay.
But we can clarify that if that would
Okay.
help. But that was the
Yeah, it's on
intent.
August 26th on the study session.
All right, perfect, thank you. And then there was one other one in the, Mr. Linebaugh brought up a great suggestion about in raising fees, that I think Cherry Creek North had raised like water and sewer tap fees. And so I think I would like to perhaps do a study session on that to find out the feasibility of doing that. Then the developers are actually paying, the tap fees are actually paying for new development. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Martinez.
Thank you. I just have a couple quick things. First, the Chop Shop is open. If you haven't been there, go check it out. Their food is good. The creative crosswalk guidelines, I would like to make sure that's on a study session coming up, and I see that on August 12th, we have something crosswalk and scooter discussion. I don't know if that's the same thing.
My understanding is that's part of the crosswalk discussion, but certainly.
Okay, awesome. Just want to make sure that didn't fall off our radar. And then I just have a quick update on KEB. I don't have my exact notes because I have a different notebook today. I didn't bring the other one. But we welcomed the new members. We have 2 new members in that group. They're really excited to get started. And they're also working together on recommendations for kind of suggestions or what they would like to see with the city center development. So once they have their formalized ideas, I will share it with council and the appropriate staff. And the Cushing Park cleanup that was scheduled got rained out, so they are rescheduling it. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. And they also have another second Waterwise event at the Malley Center coming up. I cannot remember that date either, but I will send it out when I have my proper notes. Thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
Of course, you took my thunder on the Chop Shop, but I'm happy to have them in the neighborhood, so probably be checking it out sometime this week. And then lastly, it's just we have the South Platte Water Renewable Partners meeting on Thursday morning from 7:30 to 10. I am looking forward to getting
No, it's next week.
Yeah, it's next
Is it next week?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, it is 26th. That's right. Okay, good thing.
No, it's not the 26th today.
25th.
25th, yeah, the
Another
Thursday,
week.
whatever that Thursday morning is. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
Good idea on that, okay. Thank you for that clarification, but I'm looking forward to getting an update on the biogas project, so, thank you.
Thank you. Interim City Manager's Report.
As it shows in the agenda, I'd like to give the floor to Dan Paremba, our redevelopment manager, to talk about, give you guys an update on the city center redevelopment. It's all yours, Dan. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, it's nice to be here again to update you on what we have been doing to move forward with the process of identifying a preferred master developer for the city to partner with in redeveloping the city property here at City Center. And as you'll hear also, it looks like there's a good chance it could now also include the former wine garden property, which you may remember was our big hope when we started out on this a number of months ago. The redevelopment or of one or both properties, the city property or what we refer to as the C3 property, would, as we've talked about, significantly improve the city center's mix of uses, level of activity, walkability, financial sustainability, property values, and contribution to city revenues. And as you're all familiar with, all of these have been fading significantly in recent years. So this situation gives us an opportunity, or gives you an opportunity, I should say, to really create a generational legacy project for the city and for the council to intercede in ways that, disrupt what otherwise would be a continuing trend. So following the issuance, you may remember, of a master developer RFQ and RFP a number of months ago, two master developer finalists were identified and interviewed by staff, and that committee included the interim city manager, the directors of community development, public works and finance, and myself. And from that process, two finalists emerged, and they are SKB of Portland, Oregon, and they're also known as Scanlon Kemper Bard, and Brinkman of Fort Collins, Colorado. Their RFP responses, detailed RFP responses, were included in your packets and the online agenda material. We really got very lucky. Both are very, very high quality, successful firms, and probably more importantly, have specific experience working with local municipalities on mixed use and transit-oriented redevelopment projects. So the steps that we've initiated to keep things moving forward and that we envision culminating in a formal staff recommendation to council and then hopefully council's anticipated interview of the recommended master developer include the following. And some of these I think are common sense, but as we'll discuss here momentarily, I think the nuance here is to coordinate these with some of the other things that are unfolding. So we'll continue to reach out to the two finalist references, focusing primarily on the local governments that they've worked with, both here in Colorado and out of state. We anticipate issuing supplemental questions to both of the finalists and then carefully evaluating their responses. And I think this process will take us in the direction, at least preliminarily, of starting to structure what could be an exclusive negotiating agreement. We would anticipate tours or further research of their finalist projects that are similar to City Center. Then I think the most important aspect, which will be a continued monitoring of the decisions that now C3 has as they again consider a buyer for the C3 property. So just by way of a little bit of background on the process, once the preferred master developer is ultimately identified by council, we would see a process of negotiating, drafting, and then executing, subject to council approval, an exclusive negotiating agreement. The exclusive negotiating agreement would then drive what happens probably over a 4 to 6 month period as we move towards a formal development agreement, also obviously subject to council approval. And it would be the development agreement that would govern the long-term relationship between the city and the chosen developer, primarily within the structure of what's known as a public-private partnership. And that agreement would also be based on a mutually acceptable redevelopment plan for these two portions of City Center. And there would be extensive community participation in the formation of that plan, the discussion of that plan. Both of these two finalists have strongly committed to the public participation element and have demonstrated that in their prior projects. So I will mention that these steps are, with the help of the city's outside counsel, these are the steps that are customarily followed by municipalities as they move through and then enter into public-private partnerships. Regarding the C3 property, I think the last time we spoke, we had mentioned that they had received 3 final purchase offers from highly credible firms. The contract buyer that they identified as a company out of Newport Beach, California, City Vest Commercial. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as we may discuss, City Vest recently withdrew their offer. And so now we are in discussions with C3 about what comes next. I think the good news is that we were very, very proactive in talking to City Vest about what the city's expectations for that property are and how we expected to work together going forward. And I think the reality is, I mean, no disrespect to them, but they just saw the city's expectations as too much of a pain in the neck. And they really wanted to be a status quo buyer of that property, did not want to really engage with the city in dialogue about what the future of that property could be. So I think that was a heavy factor in their decision to withdraw their offer. So now is where it gets interesting, and I think really potentially very positive for Englewood. And the scenario we're specifically dealing with is SKB, one of the 2 developer finalists, also happens to be one of the 2 purchase finalists for the C3 property. So we are dealing with a situation which we had actually hoped for, where we would have the same party on both sides of the fence, if you will, dealing with both the C3 property as well as the city property, and being able to work more efficiently towards an overall redevelopment plan and partnership with the city, and obviously a much more coordinated public outreach and public input. So that's where we are as of today. I think it's important to realize that the RFQ, RFP documents were set up very carefully to indicate the city's strong preference for that scenario, and to indicate that the city, subject to qualifications, would tend to give a very strong weighting to the buyer of the C3 property as their potential role in developing the city property. So we're, I think, in a good situation to see how things unfold here over the next few weeks. We'll continue to implement these steps that we outlined towards the idea of coming back to you with a very detailed recommendation. There are really no negative financial implications at this point. As we've pointed out, they're really all positive in terms of ultimately maximizing the property sales tax and other revenues from City Center. And so we just would, with your consent, recommend that we continue the path and come back to you with specific recommendations here in the near future.
Thank you. Are you open to questions, or City Manager, were you expecting us to do questions at this point?
Certainly. I mean, it's up to council if they want to follow up, but I'm sure Dan has answers.
Sure.
All right, let's take a few minutes and let's just do one question at a time. Member Sierra's first.
I guess the initial question, so are we looking at weeks for the C3 decision, or what's the time frame for that?
I'd like to think that it was weeks. I mean, we had a very good, Brad Power and I had a very good conference call with them at the end of last week. And we talked about, you know, the city's desires. They talked about their desires. They really would like to sell the property essentially as quickly as possible. They are trying to narrow the pricing gap between SKB and the final and the prior purchaser, I should say, the prior contract purchaser. And they are having those discussions, and I think where that could come in is as we give them some additional guidance on council's willingness to amend and extend the ground lease and the timing to do that, to the extent that council can give them some comfort level short of a full-blown, you know, amendment and extension. I think that would help give them the comfort level that they will ultimately need to probably offer a slightly higher purchase price. And we're talking about a price that's plus or minus $25 million.
Councilmember Barentine's next.
I'm just really excited about the new city manager coming in with the experience he's had in Longmont. He actually worked with Mr. Powers before, and so I think there might be some other opportunities there and some different input, especially with property that we don't actually have control over yet that still has some debt on it, and maybe some other additional new blood options that might come from this. So I'm really looking forward to him having his eyes on this and seeing where it goes. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think his input will be great. It will be very additive to the process, and I think really our priority at the moment is to keep all the options open and moving forward.
Thank you very much.
He can weigh in when he arrives.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to go with Member Wink first and then back to Member Sierra.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just say a quick thank you yet again for your thorough and productive sharing of information and socialization of what has transpired in your office with regards to this project. It's always a great learning experience for me and exciting to know the details around the timing and the time sensitivity versus cost and other important metrics, and to see how you're thinking and what we've done and how things are progressing. So thank you very much for coming and staying so late and presenting us with this valuable information this evening, Mr. Paremba.
Thank you.
Member Sierra.
Trying to, just to piggyback off of Councilmember Martinez's point, and when we held the city center redevelopment discussion, it came up there as well. But, and I'll ask council if this makes sense, but would it make sense for Dan Paremba to meet with some of the committees and boards to talk about the city center redevelopment? You know, obviously KAB had, or at least a couple members within KAB had a couple thoughts about what they would like to see within the redevelopment. I'm sure ETAC and some of the other ones would also want to, you know, give their point of view. But if you're able to meet with, if the council feels that it would be worth the time for Dan to meet with some of these committees, provide an overview of what the redevelopment could look like, and then just get points on what it, you know, what they would like to see with that redevelopment. I think it would make sense to get as much community involvement as possible as we move forward. So,
just a point of information. Mr. Paremba did succinctly talk about community
right.
Sizable efforts to engage the community at several steps once we're at that point. Are you suggesting?
Well, so the way that I took that comment was more of a, obviously it's going to be like town halls and just discussions as we're moving forward through that. But
with citizens who aren't necessarily volunteers
that are part of the
on our
committees.
boards and
Yeah, exactly.
commissions?
So I would think that just also asking committees, because they may want to see, if it's cultural arts, maybe they want to see some sort of art component to the redevelopment.
Boards and commissions.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think Member Cuesta might be next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paremba. So just going back over this, two of the master developers that we've got our eye on, one of the two is also interested in purchasing the property. And I'm sorry, which one was that again that's checking both those boxes? SKB, very good.
SKB.
Thank you. Do you get the impression that that property is just going to go to the highest bidder, though? when it comes down to those two buyers? Is there going to be any consideration that Englewood as a city is pushing hard to have that alignment between the buyer and the developer with?
Good question. We've really tried to lobby hard for the buyers that we thought were in best alignment with the city's objectives for that property, and that we thought, based on their prior research and level of interest, had the highest probability of closing. And we felt all along that that was SKB, actually, because they had been investigating the property for many months prior to the sales effort actually officially commencing and before we issued even the first RFQ. So we felt very comfortable with their level of interest, and also they clearly understood that the city would not be able to give them clear answers on the ground lease before the date that they had to close on the C3 property, and they were comfortable with that. And so that's actually quite unusual, and we felt that was a particularly good fit for the situation that we're all in together, hopefully.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Member Barentine, I believe, is next. No, I actually think it's Martinez. Yes. Councilmember Martinez, sorry.
Thanks, Councilmember Sierra, for bringing that up, the board and commission piece of that. It did come up at the last KEB meeting, and so they would love to have you come talk, because they are right now working through formulating their recommendations. They were asking me how broad, how specific, and I'm like, I'm not really know. I think broader would be better, probably. So I guess with that, is that something that we should suggest to other boards and commissions as well if they want to weigh in?
Yeah, and thanks to Councilman Sierra. I think that's a great idea, actually, to try to pull all the boards and commissions together early, if you will, and give them a preview and actively solicit their thoughts, their feedback. I think we can get some great ideas. Awesome. And pass that on to the parties that we're dealing with.
Excellent, because they were asking me about timing too, and when they should build it into their agendas, and I wasn't quite sure, so this is a perfect time. Yeah, thanks.
Member Barentine.
To Councilmember Cuesta's point, I think you made it clear that some of the information you could provide or some of what people might perceive as hurdles or that will be a pain in the neck apparently already chased some people off. So it is concerning, though, to the public when they start to hear that somebody else has been a player in having conversations for a while with the city, and that might be interfering and limiting some of our options. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, let me give you, if I might, let me give you.
No, I'll finish my question. Let me finish my question first.
Let her finish, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll respond.
Appreciate that. The other is that the presentation that was made to the Urban Renewal Authority some time ago on this, I think it adds a level of confusion when we're not set yet, and that all of this back story is going on before we really have an idea of what we're going to do. And so you've got people chiming in on something that we really don't know where we're going to be moving forward, or the presentation that's being done by the city looks like it's already set and it's just being a presentation and there's already been a decision made when actually there isn't. So I think it adds to a lot of confusion until we're just a little bit farther down the road and we're a little bit more inclusive on exactly what we have the authority to do, what all the options are that we're presenting. And I think that makes the discussion a little bit better and doesn't make it look as if it's already kind of predetermined, as a lot of some of these conversations end up sounding like they are. So I would actually hope that we would wait a little bit before we start involving all these boards and commissions for their ideas and input until we at least have a little bit more foundational groundwork of what we have to work with first. I think that can be very dangerous. Most of the citizens, mostly the biggest frustration is they're already decided, they're already going to do what they're going to do, and that's how it looks. I think the presentation to Urban Renewal was like 6 months ago, and so they were already like, are they coming to us because they think that we're going to condemn or do, I mean, so each board has their own flavor on that. So I would suggest you don't, but the council can do as they please.
Thank you. I'll let you go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I understand your level of discomfort. I can assure council, though, that we've been very, very comprehensive and careful in the way that we've conducted both the RFQ, RFP process. And I think it's important to remember that the timing of this has really been driven by the C3 foreclosure on the Weingarten property. It wasn't something that we just said, you know, we're going to take the initiative to do this now. It was something that was driven by a very specific window of opportunity. And I think just to give you a flavor for how we dealt with CityVest, we continuously reached out to them, continuously made ourselves available, continuously gave them lists of the things that they needed to be thinking about investigating. And then ultimately, their departure occurred because there was a due diligence period that had been made available to them that was 60, perhaps 90 days, and they went back to their seller, C3, and indicated that they wanted 18 months. So that was just completely, totally unreasonable in any commercial type setting. And, you know, I think they were busy looking for financing, frankly, that they could not find due to their own situation, not the city's.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for the work that you've done. You've been very tenacious about pushing this forward and kind of gingerly helping us along to give you permission for things so that we are positioned really well. I think this has paid off. I hope it's paid off in the total end of it. Council, I just want to remind all of us, me included, that when citizens are misunderstanding something, it's really our responsibility to keep getting the word out there that no, this isn't a done deal at all. Matter of fact, something just fell through. So it's really incumbent upon us to make sure we, in our town halls, meetings with people next door, whatever, that we keep letting people know that this is still a work in progress, and let's hope it comes out to be one of the best we've seen in this opportunity that we have.
Yeah, I would actually congratulate council. You know, in a very uncertain situation, you all took some steps along the way in terms of authorizing the retention of outside counsel, the issuance of the RFQ, the issuance of the RFP. And I think one of the early steps was actually the statement, the general statements about what the city was willing generally to do. And because of the fact that we were able to get that issued rapidly, it was then published nationally by CBRE, which was the broker representing C3. And that was really, really a critical step that I think set the stage for where we are today. So, you know, we need to keep in mind all the steps that collectively we've gone through on this together.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll hear more again. Thank you very much. Our next item, City Manager, did you want to?
One more. Thank you, Dan. No, I appreciate your.
She has more in her,
Yeah.
her list.
I have asked Maria DeAndrea, Public Works Director, to give council a quick update on the progress of the work at the sinkhole at Santa Fe and Oxford.
Yes, thank you. Just a very brief update. So the contractor has completed nearly the original 78 feet. That was the original intent that was approved by council in emergency plan on July 1st. So that reached to about the edge of the pavement on Oxford Avenue. And now they're getting ready to complete the next section, which was approved last Thursday evening, and so that was the remaining 110 feet. So they are moving out into the street, and one of the city of Sheridan's requirements is that they do the backfill. Instead of with dirt, it's with flow fill, which is kind of a loose, very loose concrete material. And so some of the delay, they do have the pipe in place, but some of the delay will be in getting the trucks there to complete that backfill. But they are moving steadily forward. There's a little bit of delay on Saturday because of the rain, but they are making good progress. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you for your update.
Anything else?
And I seem determined to keep you here all night. That's not really the case. I just wanted to let you know that Sean Lewis reached out to me and to Krista Gravy and asked us to set up a sort of an onboarding schedule for his August. And I know that Krista sent you an email asking for times when you might do one-on-one. If those times don't work, please let us know. That was our suggestion. But we're hoping he has an opportunity to meet with you, with community members, directors, and teams of staff, and he's going to hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you. And a whole new meeting schedule, not a doodle, it was a whole new meeting set up. We get to learn. Next, City Attorney. All right, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
8:30 tomorrow morning. See you then.
Oh, yeah. Well, you brought it up. And then I brought it up.
The severity that I wanted to, so thank you.
Thank you very much.